أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهوى ومن العجب وسطوته ومن اللسان وفلتته ومن القلم وزلته. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وافتح على الحاضرين والغائبين يا أرحم الراحمين. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah. Before we start, I just want to do a few La ilaha illallah and then pray on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Astaghfirullah, 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 astaghfirullah. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله، 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 لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. The ulama traditionally started any science with 10, what they called al-mabadi al-ashara. Did anybody do that? Any teachers before? Did anybody do that in this program? Okay. Every science has what are called al-mabadi al-ashara, and these are like al-mabda in Arabic is a beginning place. It's the place where you begin something. So it's a foundation. It's something that everything else starts from or emanates from. And so they considered that there were 10 foundations that you should know before you actually started in on something. And there are many versifications of these things, but probably one of the most famous is إن المبادئ كل فن عشرة الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة. Every science, fen, and the Arabs traditionally called a branch of knowledge a fen, the art of. Like we talk about the art of poetry or the art of this or the art of medicine. So it's very similar to that idea. The fen is the art of something. So everything had these, every art has 10 mabadi or beginning points. Al-haddu is the definition of a thing. And so the definition of something is getting to the essence of it. And one of the things about modern people is that they don't really know hudud anymore. Like in Arabic, تِلْكَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. These are the limits that God has sent. And so don't transgress the limits. The limits of language are the definitions, the had that you use. It's very important when we speak that we understand the words that are being used. One of the great problems in human societies is the breakdown of communication. If I use a word like freedom, what is the definition of freedom? Americans are always talking about freedom. What is freedom? Hurriya. Because in Arabic, freedom is very different from the definition of freedom in this culture. For instance, freedom in the pre-Islamic culture, the hur was in contradistinction to the slave. So a free person was somebody who was not a abd. The hur and the abd. Now, one of the interesting things about Islam is it makes you Abdullah. Now, if you're Abdullah, what does that mean in the relationship to everything else? You're free. Because the ubudiyya is only to Allah. It's not to anything else. And so, the hurr, the Arab poet says, al-hurru abdun ma tama', that the free man is a slave as long as he's covetous, as long as he's greedy, as long as he wants. Wal-abdu hurrun ma tama', and the slave is a free man if he's content. Which gets to the essence of the Arab understanding of freedom before Islam. That freedom is moral freedom. It's freedom from want, not freedom to. In our culture, freedom has almost been entirely defined by freedom to. Now, I'm using this just an example because I could give a whole talk just on freedom and the different ideas about freedom, but I'm only using that as a segue into the idea that when terms are not defined, miscommunication arises. So, if you're talking about aggression to me, and your understanding of aggression is my understanding for terrorism, we don't have a dialogue. So you're saying I'm an aggressor and I'm saying you're a terrorist this is like the Arabs who say, one of the Jahili Arabs was asked, what is oppression? Ma huwa haddul jawr? What is the definition of injustice? And he said, when my neighbor comes and takes my goats and my camels and my women, because they had razaya, they had, the ghuzat, the Arabs in Jahili Arab, they used to go and attack the other people. And he said, so what's justice? And he said, when I go take his goats and his camels and his women. So the Arabs also say, ba'ukum tajurru wa ba'ila tajur. Your preposition works in the sentence, but you're not granting my preposition the same agency. That's a grammarian's way of saying the same thing. So a Yemeni told me, he said the whole problem with America, he said, it's like the wolf that came down and the sheep was drinking from the pond, and he said, I'm going to eat you. And he said, why? And he said, kadarta alayya al-ma', you got the water all muddy. And the sheep said, when? He said, last year. And the sheep said, I wasn't born last year. And the wolf said, well, your father did it. So we don't have communication, so you have to identify things. Now the word had means limit. Mahdud means limited. Like Imam Tahawi says about God, la hududa. God has no had, has no limit. He's limitless, without limit. So a definition defines something and gives you, and it's done through what they call tard wa aks. It's done through exhausting the possibilities. So when you describe, if you give a definition of a human being, the logicians define the human being in the Arabic tradition as al-hayawan al-natiq. Right? This is the al-hayawan al-natiq, the speaking animal. That we're animal, we're hayawan, but we're not like other animals because we're rational. We can speak, we can articulate. That's why in Arabic, logic is called mantiq, which is the tool by which you speak. So the natiq is the one that can speak and make arguments and set up arguments. That is the definition of a human being. And then you have descriptions of human beings. A lot of people confuse descriptions with definitions. So when we look at the definition of tafsir, haddu tafsir, what is tafsir? In order to get to a definition, you have to look, first of all, the Arabs, the scholars of this tradition always say, you have to explain the term. You have to know the definition of the term itself. The term tafsir comes from al-fasar, which is kashf, to unveil or to remove a veil from something, to remove something so that you can see it. كشفنا عنك الغطاء. We have removed the ghita from your eyes. We've removed the ghita. People have a ghita. They have this veil over their eyes. Allah says that He removes that veil on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And then فَبَصُرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيد. Today your eyes are like hadid, piercing, eagle eyes. So the word, and when you get into ilm al-ishtiqaq, which is a very interesting knowledge in Arabic, which is the science of word derivations and the fact that words that share letters have similar meanings. And this is throughout Arabic, which is one of the miracles of Arabic and a proof that the language is tawqifiyya, that no human beings could have worked this out to put, because words share a letter like ilm, amal, and lama'. You know, if you just switch the words around, ilm, and then put amal, and then lama', those are the three that come out of that. So ilm is knowledge, amal is action, action is based on knowledge, and when people know something and act according to their knowledge, they become lama', brilliant. Al-ma'i is a brilliant scholar. So they're related. Now fasar in Arabic is kashafna. Another related word is safar, to journey. What happens when you journey? Journeys are about discovery. Journeys are about unveiling. The Arabs say, yusfiru an damirihi. He's telling me what's inside. He's revealing his innermost thoughts to me. The Arabs say that the musafir is the one yusfiru an khuluqihi. A traveler will let you know his character, because when people travel, their character gets unveiled. So the tafsir is the science of unveiling the meanings of Qur'an. It's to reveal the meanings of Qur'an. That's the had. The mawdu' of the topic of the Qur'an, the next is the mawdu'. The topic of the Qur'an is kalam Allah. That's what it's about. The topic of the Qur'an is dealing with kalam Allah. And then its thamra, its benefit is ma'rifatu kalamillah tibqan lil waqi'. You know, it's to understand the knowledge of, and as a way of drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you understand, that's the benefit that is derived from the science itself. The benefit. The benefit is to know, when I read the Qur'an, Yasin, wal Qur'an al-Hakim, I know what Qur'an al-Hakim means. And the benefit of that is that I understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to me. Now, if I know, when we get into the masail, I'll do that when I get there. But and then the next is وَفَضْرُهُ. The fadl of the Quran, وَفَضْرُهُ nisbatun wa wadi'. The fadl is the virtue
of the science itself. There's different sciences have different virtues. For instance, grammar is a beautiful science. It's one of the most important sciences because without it you can't understand classical languages. English is not a grammatical language. It has a grammar. It has a grammar, but it's not a grammatical language in that you do not need to know its grammar to understand it. It's very easy to learn to learn English and communicate in English, and you're going to have miscommunications, but you can understand it without knowing because it's not an inflected language. So if I say akada Musa kusa in Arabic, I have to understand Musa as a person and kusa as a food, because the inflection of that sentence, it could be the zucchini ate Moses. That could be the meaning. If kusa is marfu' and Musa is mansub. But I don't know that because the harakat don't show up. That's the way English is. So there's room for ambiguity in English in terms, but English follows a syntax. English doesn't let you say the cucumber ate Musa and it means Musa ate the cucumber. In Arabic you can say the cucumber ate Musa, but you can mean Musa ate the cucumber. Do you see the difference? Because the syntax in Arabic, the structure of the language is very flexible. You can put the verb at the end. You can put the verb at the beginning. You can put the verb in the middle. In English, you put it in the beginning or the middle. In German, you put it at the end. There's a Jewish theory that that's why they were able to do what they were doing, because they don't think about the action until the end of their sentence. So language there's a lot of problems that happen in communication. Now, if you look at knowing i'rab, you have to know grammar. Arabs, modern Arabs, they can read a newspaper, but if you forced most modern Arabs to read it with the ashkal, they'd be all over the place. In fact, the Arabs say, alhanu min qari. He's making more mistakes than somebody reciting from a book. Meaning that it's very easy to make mistakes in Arabic. I mean, even ulama who really know Arabic very well make grammatical mistakes sometimes. Really, it just happens. And it's rare. One of the few people I ever saw that I never heard him make a mistake grammatically was Sheikh Mustafa al-Makki. He was an Egyptian Azhari that I used to go listen to him do commentary on the hadith. And it was just, people used to go just to hear him talk. There were people there that really weren't even interested in the lecture. I think they were just like, it's amazing. You know, just the way he talks. Allah yarhamuhu. Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya is like that also. So there are Sheikh Sa'id Ramadan al-Buti. I mean, these people are like maraja in Arabic. If you listen to them, and they've spent, but still, you get into these books and you will find that they can misunderstand things. Many times Arabs know that when you read a sentence, sometimes you have to go back to the beginning because you worked out that, what you thought was actually the subject was the object. So you get back and you have to go back and read it again. So it's a grammatical language in that it doesn't allow you to understand it without having either intuitive knowledge of grammar, which is how the pre-Islamic Arabs had it, and the early Arab Muslims, or to later on to learn it. And that's the way we have to do it now. You have to learn grammar to be able to read it properly. And so that the fadl of Arabic is that grammar has fadl. My point was grammar has a great virtue, but it's low in the Islamic sciences. It's the one you have to start with. Like one of the little phrases I learned early on was أهمها عقائد ثم فروع تصوف وآلة بها الشروع. You know, this is like tartib of knowledge. The most important knowledge, أهمها عقائد, is to learn your aqidah. And then فروع, to learn like the practical things to do in your religion, tasawwufun, to work on purifying your heart, and then alatun biha shuru', and then a tool that you have to begin with, which is Arabic grammar. So even though it's the least of the sciences, all of them are based on it. Al-Arabiyatu miftah al-ulum. Al-Arabiyyatu miftah al-ulum. It is the key to knowledge in our religion. If you don't know Arabic, you do not have access to knowledge in the same way that somebody. There's secondary sources, and you meet people that are very learned about Islam. So you can't say that somebody can't understand Islam without understanding Arabic. I don't believe that. But to get into the sciences of Islam, you have to learn Arabic. And certainly these primary sources, because they'll be until the end of time in Arabic. The Qur'an cannot be translated. It can't. And in reality, no real great literature can be translated. It just doesn't work. Anybody who knows two languages and has read a piece of great literature in both languages, they know the original is always better, if they really know it, because you can't, and language is too nuanced. So that is, and then nisbatun, the nisba is what the science is related to. Like طب is نسبته إلى العلوم التي تتعلق بصحة ومرض البدن. It's a science that's related to the health and disease of a body. That's the relationship. Tafsir نسبته إلى علوم الشرعية. It is in fact أفضلها وأعلاها. It's the highest and most exalted of all the sciences of Sharia. So this is its relationship to other sciences, is that. And then al-wadi' is the one who first formulated the science. It's important to know that because those people have fadl. They have virtue. And so classically, the scholars always honored the one who came with the science first. Like Imam al-Shafi'i was honored by being the founder of usul al-fiqh. That does not mean that the ulama weren't using usul before Shafi'i. They were. He was the one that saw what they were doing and articulated the methodology and theory. Nobody had done that before him. In the same way that Aristotle is the inventor of logic, but he wasn't the first person to ever use logic. People were using logic. Plato and Socrates are filled with Aristotelian. In fact, Aristotle uses most of his examples from Plato and Socrates, but he was the one that identified what they were doing, the formula. So tafsir has been going on from the very beginning. The Prophet was explaining the Qur'an. The ulama differ on who really is wadi' at-tafsir. Most of them say ar-rasikhun fil ilm. They're the ones Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Qur'an that it has two types of ayahs, the clear ayahs and the hazy ayahs. And then it says, that the people who have diseases in their heart follow the hazy ayahs, which is always a sign that somebody's not well. If they ask you what certain verses mean and they're hazy verses, it's always a sign that something's going on. But Allah says, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا. The people firmly rooted in knowledge. And it says, وَلَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Nobody knows the ta'wil except Allah of these hazy verses. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. Some of the ulama say the wow there is called atf. It's a conjunction. And so it's actually saying Allah knows them and the rasikhun fil ilm, and then stop. And others say no, the wow is actually isti'naf. The sentence stops at la ya'lamu ta'wiluha illa Allah, that only Allah knows the ta'wil, and the rasikhun fil ilm say about that, we accept it. It's all from Allah. So there's a difference of that wow in tafsir. But Imam Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu said, وَأَنَا مِنَ الرَّاسِخِينَ. He actually said, I'm from amongst the rasikhin who know the ta'wil of the Qur'an, because the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma faqihu fi ad-din wa 'allimhu ta'wila. Faqihu fil Qur'an wa 'allimhu ta'wila. Teach him the Qur'an, the meanings of Qur'an, and teach him how to do interpretation of the Qur'an. So he was from those people. So this is a khilaf that's been going on for a long time. وَكُلُّ نَصٍ أَوْهَمَ التَّشْبِيهَ أَوْوِلْهُ وَأَوْفَوِّضْ وَرُمْ تَنْزِيهَ. There's ulama that say you can interpret everything in the Quran, and then there's other ones that say, except even the huruf al-muqatta'at, they have meanings that they say relate to those words. And they say that it's open as long as you have the adawat. If you have the tools of knowledge, right, then you can make that tafsir or ta'wil. If you don't, you can't. So Ibn Abbas is also, some say that he is the first real mufassir of the Qur'an, Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu. And if Ibn Abbas said something, it has a lot of authority amongst the ulama just because of who he is. And then the important thing is to determine, did he actually say it? Is the sanad sound or not? But generally, Ibn Abbas is after the Prophet ﷺ. If Ibn Abbas says something about the Qur'an, he has a position amongst the ulama and the mufassirun that is very high. And then al-ism is ilm tafsir, and it's also ta'wil, right? Because tafsir and ta'wil have synonymous meanings. Some of the ulama say no, that tafsir is what the words mean, like al-Qur'an. It's from qara'a, and the root is jama', to gather something, and it's the gathering of these words. Some say that it's غير mushtaq, it's its own word. It just means al-Quran, it's the name, like Allah. Some say Allah is not from al-ilah, it's just Allah. That's the proper name of God, and Allahu alam what it means. So these are differences, but if you know the differences, then that's also a type of knowledge of the meaning of the actual articulation. Al-Hakim is from hakama, which is to control something, to judge something, to be wise. Hikmah is wisdom. Hukm is judgment. Hakam is a judge. So al-Hakim is the one, and then it's on a certain wazn that means fa'il and it means maf'ul. So it can be the thing that is judged, or the thing that is perfect, muhkam. You know, it's complete in its, there's a perfection to it, and it can also be the wise. So generally it's interpreted here as the wise Quran, al-dhikr al-hakim, you know, that it's wise. So that is knowing the tafsir, if you know the meanings. But then the ta'wil is, those are the denotations. If you want a word that's used in lexicology, a denotation is what the word specifically means. The connotation are the meanings that are possible, that are derived from that basic meaning. So when I say, for instance, hand, in English, this is a hand. But I also say, lend me a hand. I don't mean cut off your hand and I can borrow it. Like, lend me a hand. I'm asking you for help. So a connotation of hand can be help. You can also say, his hand is more powerful than his hand. Now I'm talking about power. You can say, I've got to hand it to him. Right? I mean, there's lots of ways that hand can be used. In Arabic, there's literally, there's about 17 meanings for hand. In Dasht, which is Farsi, like Imam al-Ghazali said about people that were translating Qur'an into Farsi, he said you should never translate Yadullah into Dasht Khoda. Because he said if you say Dasht in Farsi, he said it doesn't mean the same things it means in Arabic, so you're delimiting the meaning, which he said is unjust to the Book of Allah. It's a problem with translation, because Arabic meanings are very vast. So that is, ta'wil and tafsir are the names, but it's usually ilm at-tafsir is the name that's given for this science. And then al-istimdad, where does the science draw its knowledge from? Al-istimdad, yastamiddu, from what? What does it draw its knowledge from? It draws its knowledge from the book, the sunnah, and then fatahul al-Arab fil balagha. You know, the great Arabs of Jahiliyyah, al-Arab al-Arba, al-Arab al-Musta'riba, qabla al-Khadrama. It's the Arabs that really knew Arabic. So you can use classical Arabic to interpret the Quran. And one of the most foundational principles of Quranic interpretation is that it be in accordance with the Arabic language. If you make a tafsir that is not in accordance with the Arabic language, there's two things. Usually it's considered batil, but there are some of the ulama that allow for what's called ishara, right? Ishara, which is a meaning that has a truth to it, but it's not really specific to the actual language itself. But there's a truth to it. So for instance, attaqullah wa yu'allimukum Allah. Have taqwa of Allah and God will teach you. many scholars have used that as a jumla shartiyya, a conditional sentence. If you have taqwa, God will teach you. That's not what the Arabic says. So that's an ishara from the ayah. It's not a tafsir of the ayah. Do you see? Because the ayah actually says, "Attaqullah wa yu'allimukum Allah kayfa tattaqun." Have taqwa of Allah, and God will teach you what you need to have taqwa. That's actually the meaning of the Arabic in the way that it presents itself. But you can take an ishara like that, but isharas are very dangerous. And Imam as-Sulami wrote a book called Al-Haqa'iq, which is a Sufi interpretation of the Qur'an. Some of the ulama said it's not haqa'iq, it's bawatil. Because haqa'iq means realities, bawatil means falsehoods. So some of the ulama said it's bawatil. So this has been going on for a long time, as you can assess from that. What Imam Ibn Juzay al-Kalbi says, إِذَا أَنصَفْنَا, if we're fair, فِيهِ حَقَائِقْ وَبَوَاطِلْ. There's realities in it and there's also falsehoods. So tafsir can have ishara, is a dangerous thing. And some of the Sufis took completely outrageous meanings that are unacceptable. And some of them took isharat, an example of that about like Salamun ala Yasin, like in relation to Yasin. Salamun ala Yasin. In Surah Safat, it says, peace be upon Yasin. Some of them say it means, there's different qira'at. One of the qira'at is Yasin, and so they say it actually means Ilyas, because the siyaq, the context of the verse, was talking about Ilyas. And the other ayahs mention that, peace be upon the prophet that it was talking about. So here it means Ilyasin. But there's a qira'ah sab'iyah that says Al-Yasin, the family of Yasin. And some of them say Ilyas was Ilyas ibn Yasin. And so it was actually the family of Yasin. Some of them say that Yasin means the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that it means Ya Sayyid or Ya Insan, and it's addressing the Prophet. Innaka Yasin, innaka. Surely you, Yasin, are from the messengers. So they say, Salamun ala al-Yasin is prayers that peace be upon the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of them say Yasin is a name for Qur'an. And so, Salamun ala al-Yasin, Salamun ala al-Qur'an. So these are interpretations. If you look, even one of the great Sufi commentators of the Qur'an, Ibn Ajiba, says about Salamun ala al-Yasin, it says, السياق يأبى هذا التأويل. The context really doesn't allow for this interpretation. But yet, Ibn Kathir, a very authoritative scholar of tafsir, brings that as a tafsir of that verse, that it meant the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are the ways that the scholars now have looked at this science. With tafsir, you have what's called naqal, and then you have aqal. Naqal and aqal are the tradition and then reason. These are the two components in tafsir. Naqal is what's handed down, and then aqal is how you understand what's handed down. Some of the ulama say, really the only safe tafsir is naqal. We should just say what the first three generations said and not really go beyond that. And other ones said that's insane, because the Qur'an is salihun li kulli zaman. It's appropriate for every time and place. And the reason that the Prophet ﷺ did not interpret it was for us to be able to derive meanings from it until the end of time. So the Qur'an is something where Ibn Umar was asked about tafsir, and he said, أحسن تفسيره الزمان. The best tafsir of the Qur'an is time itself. Just allow its meanings to unveil. Right? So the hukm al-shari' is that it's fard kifaya. Hukm al-shari' is that it's fard kifaya. That somebody has to learn it amongst our community, because the book always has to be understood. One of the problems in the modern Muslim world is that the Quran is memorized, but the tafsir is not learned. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Antum fi zamanin qalilun qurra'uhu, kathirun fuqaha'uhu." You're in a time when the people who recite the Quran are few, but the people who understand it are many. And he said, وسيأتي على أمتي زمان كثير قراءه قليل فقهاؤه يحفظون حروفه ويضيعون حدوده. But a time will come on my community, أو كما قال, a time will come on my community when there will be many Quran reciters, but few people who understand the Quran. They will master its letters, but they won't follow its injunctions. So the Prophet ﷺ warned about simply learning. It's a good thing to, and rote memorization is a beautiful thing, and it's one of the qualities of our ummah. But the Arabs say, حفظ وقرين خير من حفظ سطرين خير من قراءة وقرين وفهم سطرين خير من حفظ وقرين. To memorize 2 little lines is better than reading several pages. But to understand 2 little lines is better than memorizing several pages. So that's an important aspect. And then masailu are what is the Quran about? Well, the Quran tafsir, there are different tafsirs. The masail of the Quran are the awamir wa nawahi, the injunctions, prohibitions. That's the fiqh of the Quran. And certain ulama deal with that. Those are called tafsirs of ahkam. Like Imam al-Qurtubi, his tafsir deals largely with the ahkam of Quran. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, his tafsir is called Ahkam al-Quran. It deals with the ahkam. He focuses on the verses that relate to injunctions and prohibitions. And then you have tafsirs and al-Jassas from the Hanafi madhab. Then you have tafsirs that focus on the grammar of the Quran, i'rab al-Quran. So there's a whole slew of Qurans that deal with that. Then you have Qurans that deal with the balagha of Quran, like al-Kashaf, which is one of the favorite traditionally Qurans of tafsirs of the ulama, which was written by Imam Zamakhshari, the Mu'tazili scholar. It's a brilliant tafsir, but it deals largely with the rhetorical nature of the Quran. Baqallani also wrote on that, I'jaz al-Quran, from that aspect of it. Al-Rifa'i and other ones. And then you have the tafsirs that are naqal, ma'thur. They're tafsirs that relate all the hadiths, like Ibn Kathir is focused on naqal. And then you have tafsirs that are related to the vastness of the Quran, like Imam al-Razi, Fakhruddin al-Razi. Some of the ulama, and it's like a hasad, but some of the ulama said about his tafsir, Mafatih al-Ghaib, فيه كل شيء إلا تفسير. There's everything in it except tafsir. Like my talk. Because people are saying, when's he going to get to Yasin? Yasin's not easy. Yeah, because tafsir scares me. I don't like tafsir because it's a heavy thing. It's a weighty thing. سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We're going to thrust on you a weighty word. The Quran used to, when the Prophet had the Quran come down, the camel, Abu Bakr had his leg under the Prophet's thigh, and he thought his leg was going to break from the weight of the Prophet's thigh when the wahi was coming down. But the camel couldn't ever hold him. If the Quran came down when he was on the camel. And one of the amazing things is that the Quran has been revealed in all these different places. Like fi sama on al-Isra, fil ard, and bayna sama'i wal ard when he was on the camel. I mean, they use these examples that the Quran was revealed in all these different situations. Even in his bedroom when he was with Aisha, he said she was the only woman that the Quran was revealed like that to him. So, but Fakhruddin deals with philosophy, he deals with amazing meanings of the Quran and goes into that. So these are all the types of things. And then you have Tafsir Ishari, which are the Sufi tafsirs. And there's no doubt anybody who's fair, some of them are fascinating. They're very interesting to read because you just marvel at how they get these meanings out of the verses. Imam al-Qushayri's tafsir is beautiful, and it's generally a very accepted tafsir. And Ibn Ajiba has some amazing insights into the Qur'an. And he's because he was such a vast scholar of the outward sciences, he'll tell you when he thinks they're off on this one. So these are all the different variations of the Qur'an. So now we'll begin. So that's what, I just wanted to give you, that's what the first lecture was, giving you a definition of the Qur'an, دعوة الخلق إلى عبادة الله, right? والدخول في دينه is the invitation of God to this worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to enter into this deen with Him. And then I went through what's that's based on, the aqaid and the ahkam, based on the understanding, and then the actions that relate to that understanding, and then based on the 7 subject matter of the Qur'an. Of every verse is one of those or more of those 7 meanings about the rububiyat, right? Uluhiyat, the rububiyat, the nubuwat, the ma'ad, the ahkam, right? What else? Wa'ad and wa'id, and the qasas. So those are the real foundation. And then this one was to let you know just what these 10 things are about this science. And now Surah Yasin surah in Arabic it can mean a fence or something, an enclosure. So it's something that's enclosed in something. And the surat, it's also yujma' ala suwar and surat, but it's an enclosure. Yusawiruhu aswira, the women know, they wear the siwar, right? And the siwar is from the same root. So the siwar is something that encompasses your wrist. So the surah is something that encompasses, in this it's like a chapter, what we would call in English a chapter, but it's an encompassing theme. And one of the very profound aspects of the Qur'an that's quite stunning when you get into it, and very few scholars have done it. Ibn Zubair al-Granati is one of them. I mean, Sheikh Muhammad Ghazali wrote a book recently before he died, Allah yarhamuhu, called The Themes of Qur'an. And in the introduction, I don't know why they did this, but they said like he was the first scholar to do that. So whoever wrote that introduction hasn't read Tafsir, because there were a lot of scholars that have done that. But they're not as many as one would think. But the famous ones, Imam Suyuti wrote a Tafsir on the themes of Qur'an, Ibn Zubair al-Granati, but probably the best is al-Biqa'i, whose tanasub al-ayat is amazing when he shows how verses and surah are related to each other. But most of the ulama did a tafsir that just went from ayah to ayah, and they didn't create the themes of the Qur'an, which is problematic. Partly they did it to leave that to people. You know, once you understand it, you need to study the book. If they did it all for you, then you're just passive recipients, right? You have to think. Islam is about thinking. And yatadarasunuhu bainahum, they study it together. So the Yasin, which is the 36th chapter of the Quran, is named Ibn Abbas. Oddly enough, I mean the muqatta'at, I think maybe did anybody talk about the muqatta'at before, the huruf of the Quran? The huruf of the Quran are not known. I mean the soundest thing of the huruf is Allahu A'lam. Allah knows what they mean. But Yasin, of all of them, Yasin is the one that most of the ulama actually do interpret. The other ones, they tend to say, I mean, some say Alif Lam Mim. Alif is for Allah, Lam is for Jibreel, Mim is for Muhammad, and that's Allah to Jibreel to Muhammad. I mean, you get these types of tafsirs that they say. But generally, we don't know. Taha, Alif Lam Ra, Allahu A'lam. But I would say one of the most intriguing for me aspects of the muqta'at is it's almost like Allah is saying, before you even think about reading this book, set aside what you think you know. Because if you come to this book with arrogance, there's nothing in this book for you. Like the the student who came to the sheikh, and he was saying, I studied with so-and-so these hadiths, and I studied with so-and-so this book, and I studied with so-and-so this book, and I studied with so-and-so this book. And he was going on and on and on. The sheikh was, and so what do you want to do? He said, I want to study with you. And so the sheikh started pouring the tea, and then when the glass got full, it just kept going over. And the student said, stop, it's full. He said, why? And he said, because it can't take any more. And he said, so a full cup can't take any more. He said, right. He said, well, you seem like a full cup. What what are you coming to me to learn for? So the Alif Lam Mim is, have some humility when you come to this book. Now, another aspect is Saussure, for people who know linguistics or people who study linguistics. Saussure, who was a famous linguist about 100 years ago, developed a theory of language, which is where we get structuralism from. Structuralism, the idea that languages have these deep structures, and he identifies language as being related to differences, that language is not about definition so much as it is about the differences of things in relation to other things. So there's these structures, and if you work out the semantic patterns, you can understand language. One of the things Saussure says, though, is the phoneme is meaningless. That's a principle in structuralism, that all of language begins with doubled phonemes. You need a dyad to begin, like of. You need those two sounds. Doesn't really mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. That was Saussure's theory. This negates that theory because it's meaning all the way down. Even the letters have meanings. We just don't know what they mean. Everything is meaningful. Nothing is without meaning. These letters are amazing. And the Arabic letters are amazing. Ain is an amazing letter. Ain. I mean, just you have to say it, Ain. And it's like squeezing and Ain means essence. It's the essence of something. It means the eye. Right? That's an amazing thing. Look at Lam. Lam is an amazing letter. Lam. Have you ever seen babies when they put their tongue, mothers know this, they always put their tongue, newborns, you know how they put their tongue on the top of their mouth? And they do that. Do you know how they do that? Am I making this up? They all do it. All babies do that. That's the beginning of La ilaha illallah, because that was what we were created to say. And so they're learning how to use that tongue to say the lam letter. You know what lulan means in Greek? Lulan? It means to soothe. Because the most soothing sound to the Greeks was la, la, la. Which is why we say lullabies. La ilaha illallah. Why is that? Why is that recognized even by the ancient Greeks? That sound, la, 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 la. You have to teach, no, it's not la, la, it's la ilaha illallah. It's much nicer. It has meaning, and it'll soothe your heart. Really, it's amazing. So these are amazing things. Ra is an amazing letter. I love Ra. And the Arabs call it harfu takrir, which is the letter that does rrr. That's what takrir means. But then they say, but it's named that so that you don't do rrr. Right? So Moroccans, when they recite Qur'an, they always do the rrr. But if you go to the East, they don't do that. Right? But the ra sound, if you look at Arabic, rrr letters usually relate to pulling something along, like marra, farra, karra, right? It's amazing because the rrr, right, marra, marra, it keeps happening over and over again. Karra, to flee, farra, to flee, karra, to go back. So it has the idea of something being dragged. Yajurru, jarra, to drag, literally. That's what jarra means. And then lam and ra are related. They're from the same makhraj. Say la. Now say ra. Right? Do you feel the articulation? That's called a makhraj. Ra, la. Right? And that's why ra and la are often interchangeable in the Arabic language, in words. You can actually interchange lam and ra in words and you'll get the same meaning. It's amazing. So the huruf and muqatta'at are these secrets that Allah doesn't tell us what they mean, but we know they have meaning. So we say Allahu A'lam. But Yasin, if you take the word insan and you turn it into a diminutive, which is called a tasghir in grammar. A diminutive is like pepito in Spanish, right? Pepito, little peppy, right? So we don't, in English, we don't really, we say little, peppy. We don't say pepito. So our diminutives aren't very sophisticated. But in Arabic, you have diminutives where you can say insan, and if you want to say little man, you say unaysin. Unaysin. And ya means oh. And then the Arabs like to do this thing which they call hadf, which is to cut things out that they just sound long or... So unaysin is too long to say little man. So they just say sin to mean little man. Or big man, because tasghir is used for ta'zim also. So it's a nice thing about Arabic. The Arabs have wonderful strategies for insulting people, and then when the person gets insulted, they can always switch and say, I didn't mean that. It's really interesting. There's so many devices in the Arabic language to do that. And one of them is tasghir. Because you can call a man tasghir for tahqir, to like belittle him, but you can also call it to exalt him because it's a term of endearment. Oh, my little one. And it's a term of, so you could, if you call a man, you little man, and he's, what? How dare you call me little? No, I meant that. I love you. So that's what Ibn Abbas said that meant. And he said it was in Lughat Tay and in a riwayah in Syrianiya that it meant man in Syrianiya, seen. So Yasin is how it begins. Now some say that, generally there's what they call idhar. You have idgham and idhar in tajweed. Idgham is when you assimilate a word into another word, like with the huruf al-idgham, yarmalun. So you say sirajan wahaja. That's idgham. Some say that the sin gets assimilated into the following wow, and others say that it's idhar, which would be unusual because the noon is a letter of assimilation. But there are points in that. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim is an example of lam, which would normally have an idgham there. It has idhar in that surah. But in Warsh you don't. There's idgham. So you say kalla bal rana ala qulubihim in Warsh, riwayat Warsh. There's idgham. In the other there's idhar. So some of them say it goes Yasin wal Qur'an, like that, into that. And others say no, you stop on Yasin and do that. And then it has the med on both of those letters. So it begins with that opening. And then it begins with an oath. And this is one of the things about the huruf al-muqatta'at, is that they are always dealing with the Qur'an. So if you look at it's always followed by some expression of the Qur'an. One of the things that happened to the Prophet ﷺ when revelation came to him, it was like a bell. Now a bell is reverberation. It's dawi. If you look at the word kun, and I learned this from a great musician, but I thought it was a very interesting, he was a famous oud player from Nubia, Hamza Alauddin. Because he said Allah began existence with kun, and he said that the ka is a cutting sound, which is true. It's used for cutting. In fact, in Arabic, many words that have cut relate to cutting. And in English, we even use cutting, to cut. So ka is a cutting sound. And then noon is a vibratory sound. Kun. And so he was saying that the silence, from that existence comes from nothingness into being. So it's literally cutting the nothingness, and then the noon is the reverberation of existence. And one of the things that we know about existence is it's all reverberating. Like physicists tell us, everything has a resonance. Everything is resonating. And so resonance is dawi in Arabic, dawi. And the Qur'an, they talk about the Qur'an resonating. That the Sahaba كانوا يقرؤونه كدوي النحل, like the reverberation of the bees. And one of the things about reciting Qur'an with tajweed is that you're forced to do these sounds that you normally don't do, which creates these resonances and affects you, because these things have an effect on you. When you recite the Qur'an properly, it's forcing you to, your whole body begins to resonate. Yasin. It's there. The sound itself is power. The sound is power. There's power in the sound itself. And so it's followed by this oath. The wow there is for qasam, to swear an oath. Wal Qur'an al-Hakim. By the Qur'an, the wise Qur'an. Wal Qur'an al-Hakim. And that's why it's Qur'ani al-Hakim with the kasra, because of the wow. Wal Qur'an al-Hakim. Innaka lamin al-mursaleen. Indeed, verily, you are one of those who have been sent. Why? Why the oath? One of the interesting things about when you say something, that a proposition, somebody will say, bring your proof. What lawyers always do, if they're good, is they always establish their proofs before the proposition. So they give you all the reasons, and then they have their summation, which is to tell you why. Because they want you to rationally come to the conclusion, and then they'll add stories in there to get the emotional content as well, because they know that emotion's important. But they will give you the rational, and then they bring you the proposition. Now, you have to understand an oath, because one of the things about modern people is they don't know the power of words anymore. I'll give you an example. In this country, who knows Alexander Hamilton? First time probably ever mentioned in a discussion of the Qur'an. But Alexander Hamilton was the Secretary of Treasury under Washington, right? How did he die? In a duel with a man called Aaron Burr, who had been vice president. Isn't it interesting that we had a vice president in this country who killed the Secretary of Treasury in a duel? I mean, America, the beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, could you imagine them doing that now? Maybe they should. Solve some of the problems in Washington. You know, I challenge you to a duel. I demand satisfaction. You know, Glenn Beck, I'd like to challenge him to a duel. I mean, these people have to know that words have meaning. That you can't just say things and not think that there's no meaning attached to those things. When you disparage the honor of people, when you vilify human beings that you have no knowledge of, and you say things about them and who they are and what evil they've done, they've had no trial. Like Imam Luqman in Detroit. What trial was he given? He's condemned. There's a jury, and a judge, and an executioner. Really? There's no uproar about that. Because he's a poor man. He's an insignificant man. He's in an inner city, in the worst part of America, that looks like a war zone. And people don't care about people like that. So they can go in and just gun a man down who was a Navy SEAL, served his country. And what's the charge? Fencing stolen goods? This is how you deal with people that sell stolen, but they didn't even steal the property. This is how you deal with people that fence stolen goods? You raid their place of worship and let a dog out on the person and then gun them down when they shoot the dog in self-defense? But who cares, right? It's like these people in Cleveland. It's like these women in Cleveland. Who cares? 14 women, convicted rapist, sex offender. But who cares? They're just poor people, right? Who cares? Even though people were complaining about the smell coming out, calling the police for months. No, words have meaning. If somebody calls for help, you should help them. There's actually haqq al-inqadh in Islam, that people have a right to be saved, no matter who they are. Whether they're Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, it doesn't matter. Words have meaning. People disparage people's honor all the time. There was a time when people would actually demand satisfaction because honor meant so much to them. What did the founding fathers write when they wrote there? Upon this we pledge our lives, wealth, and sacred honor. Sacred honor. Honor in Arabic is shahama. It's very similar to the English meaning of honor, an honorable person. He's an honorable person, a man of his word, a woman of her word. That's what words are about, and that's why we don't even understand oaths anymore. Oaths, there's books in our tradition written on how to get out of oaths. That's how important people. Now we just say wallahi, 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 and nobody thinks about what wallahi means. You know, wallahi is used, it's unbelievable how people use wallahi now. It has no meaning. Wallahi ya akhi ana qutra, wallahi ana. Why are you swearing an oath? It's a big thing to swear an oath. I used to tell Arabs I was born in a town called Wallah Wallah, which is true, and they would say, Wallah Wallah. So I'm Walawi. The man from Wallah Wallah. So people don't understand oaths anymore. And that's why, Herodotus, the great Greek historian, said, of all nations, no one takes the oath more seriously than the Arabs. This was centuries before Islam. Of all nations, no one takes the oath more seriously than the Arabs. If an Arab gives you his word, my father said when he was young, he remembered a saying, he's like in his 80s, but he said when he was young, he remembered a saying, I'd rather have an Arab on his word than a contract. That was a saying that people had about Arabs. Like Arabs were people of their word. And that's why to swear an oath is not an insignificant thing. When Allah says, Wal Qur'an al-Hakim, to the Arabs, this was a big thing. To swear an oath that you are a messenger of God. Innaka lamin al-mursalin. There, it's the answer to that oath. You are. Surely, verily. Now you have tawqeed. Because he could have said, Wal Qur'an al-Hakim, anta rasul, anta mursal. No. Innaka. Verily, indeed, surely, an emphasis. And then la again, to use it again. That you are lamin al-mursaleen. This is, we don't understand modern people. It's sad that we've lost this access. But this, when the Arabs first heard this, even the Jahili Arabs would be, it's power. It's power. It's power. It's innaka lamin al-mursaleen. This is real. This is not a lie. And who was Al-Amin? The man who didn't tell lies. The man who didn't need to swear an oath because everybody believed him without an oath. So what does it mean when he swears an oath? And what does it mean when he's telling you his Lord is swearing an oath on his behalf? Yasin. وَالْقُرْآنِ الْحَكِيمِ إِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. On a straight path. لَا إِعْوِجَاجَ فِيهِ. You're not on a crooked path. This is a straight path. You're on a straight path. This is the path of istiqamah. This is the way of uprightness. You're commanding to honesty. You're commanding to taking care of the poor. You're commanding to treating women with dignity. You're commanding to take care of the widow and the orphan. You're commanding to purify people from arrogance, from envy, from hatred. You're commanding people to join the bonds of kinship. You're commanding people to treat animals with dignity. You're commanding people to fight wars with rules of engagement. You're on a straight path. There's no crookedness in your path. And the people that are against this path that you're calling to are crooked people. That's what this is about. على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم. This is a tanzil. And this is mansub and marfu' according to the different qira'at. I'm doing warsh, where he has it marfu'. Some say it's mubtada, tanzil al-aziz al-rahim. Litundira is the khabar. And some say that it's a khabar and then the mubtada is mahduf. For people that are interested in why there's differences of these rafa', I'm not going to explain that. Tanzil al-aziz al-rahim is, the tanzil is the bringing down of this book. That nazala tanzilan, so it's a masdar. Nuzzila tanzilan or nazala. Nazzala inna anzalna, anzala, nazala. They have slightly different meanings in Arabic, whether it's inzal or tanzil or nuzul. But they all mean coming down, nazil. Tanzilul Aziz al-Rahim. The Aziz, one of the things that Fakhruddin al-Razi said, that if you want to understand the Qur'an, the secret of the Qur'an is in the divine names. And that's a man who spent his entire life thinking about the Qur'an. And it's quite extraordinary why Allah uses, for instance, Al-Aziz al-Rahim is unusual because usually it's what? Al-Aziz al-Hakim. Like one of the punishments for the as-sariqu wa-sariqatu faqta'u aydiyahuma, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends that verse with Al-Aziz al-Hakim, because azza fa-hakama. You know, Allah is Aziz. He has made property sacred. If you break the sacred trust of property, He has a hukum, and the hukum is severe. That's why when a Bedouin heard Asma'i recite the verse, and Asma'i said, Innaka ghafurur rahim, the Bedouin said, Hada kalam man? Who said that? And Al-Asma'i said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, La wallah. He was Bedouin, didn't know anything about Qur'an. He said, Allah didn't say that. And Al-Asma'i thought about the verse and realized he'd made a mistake, and then said, Aziz al-Hakim, and the Bedouin said, Hada kalamullah. That's he said, Azza fa hakama. You know, but you don't cut off hands and then say you're merciful and compassionate. It's a different tajalli. So it's very interesting that here there's a tajalli of Izzah and of Rahmah. Because the Qur'an is Bushra and Indar. He's Bashir and Nadhir. There's the Aziz in telling us He's Dhu Intiqam, and then there's the Rahim in telling us that He's going to forgive us if we turn to Him. So this is Tanzilul Aziz al-Rahim. It has Izzah and it has Rahmah. It has Jalal and it has Jamal. He's Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And this is His book. So it's coming with both Izzah and Rahmah. لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُم. In order for you to warn a people, لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُم. That you should warn a people. And then the ma, and this is one of the interesting things about Arabic. Generally they say that's ma nafiya, that it's a negating ma, that they had not been warned before. That is for al-Arab al-Aqarib. Al-Aba al-Aqarib, because they didn't have warners. There's Ahl al-Fatra are between Ismail and the Prophet ﷺ. Those are the Ahl al-Fatra, because the Arabs didn't have messengers from Ismail on. But the Arabs before that had messengers. So some of them say that the ma there is masdariya, some say it's mawsula. So it could mean لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا, in other words, what? أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُم, what their fathers had been warned about. So you're bringing the same warning that your fathers had been warned about before. That's al-aba al-aba'id, the fathers that are very far away. And some say, no, it means it's mawsula, it means alladhi, right? Or, the same thing that which they had been warned of before, or it means that hadn't been given a warning. That's one of the things about the language of Qur'an. It holds several meanings, and all of them are sometimes valid because they relate to different things. Like The Arabs did have warners, but they were a long time ago. And this is reminding you. It's tajdeed. It's bringing the same. Or it's been so long that your fathers hadn't been warned, your recent fathers. So it could be either one. فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ. So that's the reason they're غَافِلُون. They're غَافِلُون. What is ghafla? Ghafla. Huh? What's that? Ghafwa is sleeping. Yeah, ghafla is more like heedlessness. Somebody who's in a heedless state is called ghafil. The simpleton or a fool is called mughaffal because they're easy to trick. So they're not paying attention. Like people that fall for Ponzi schemes would be called mughaffalun. Because they're not thinking. They're easy to trick. So ghafla is about heedlessness. Imam al-Junayd said all of sin or wrong action is rooted in ghafla. That's the basis of it. That if you were really aware of God, you could never sin. If God was present in your heart, it would be impossible to sin. Ya ayyuhal insan, ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem. Allah said, oh, you human being, what has put you in this state of delusion about your Lord? One of the mufassirun said, أَعَدَّ جَوَابَهُ فِي سُؤَالِهِ. He put his answer to the question in the question itself. What has taken you away from your generous Lord in that you think that you can do these things that you can do and you're not going to be taken into account? What did it? Where's the jawab? Where's the answer in the question? Your generosity. Because people can only sin when they're experiencing the generosity of creation. That's when they sin. You can take something for nothing when you think there's something that can be taken for nothing. That's when you steal. So Allah is so generous to His creation that sometimes people forget. And that's what ghafla is. It's a forgetfulness. It's a state of forgetfulness. The Arabs before Islam were in a state of ghafla. They're in a state of ghafla now. The whole world is in a state of ghafla. Welcome to planet Earth. 6 billion people and we're all in a state of ghafla. It's amazing. So if all the doctors are sleeping, who's going to tend to the patients? We were in a madhouse. The asylums, one of the crazy people got the key and they've let all the doors open and all the doctors are sleeping. And then we're wondering why there's wars all over the place, because the people that are supposed to be running the insane asylum are in ghafla themselves, or they've gone mad. Inna la fi zamanan li farti shududihi man laysa yujanninuhu man la yujanninuhu falaysa bi'aqili. We're in a time that's so extreme in its madness. If it doesn't drive you mad, you are mad already. Welcome to the modern world. And then they wonder why Fort Hood and Cleveland and Florida and people are going mad because the world has gone mad. It's an insane situation. And the psychiatrists, when they go mad, they're supposed to be treating the mad people. And that's exactly my point, is that when the people that are treating have gone mad, you know that things are bad. Because the Muslims are actually supposed to help people. Algeria, who's from Algeria here? Nobody's from Algeria? Moroccans, I know. Nobody's from Algeria. Algeria, 200 years ago, was sending aid to Europe during the famine. Wheat. Aid to Europe during their famine. Algeria. I'm not making that up. It's Algerian history. Sending aid. Like now you have Western countries send aid to Muslim countries. Only 200 years ago, Muslim countries were sending aid to Western countries. One of the things about ghafla, a word that's interesting in English is called acedia. It's not really used anymore. And it's interesting words that disappear, right? Like sin. Do you ever hear anybody use that word anymore? Sin, seriously. People, you'll never hear sin. Have you ever heard anybody on TV say sin? They don't, unless it's Sunday on those funny channels. And then they use it too much. That's all they use. Which leads one to wonder what's going on there too. But sin is a beautiful word. Khati'ah in Arabic is sin. You know, does anybody know the original meaning of khati'ah in Arabic? It's a mistake, but it's a term that the Arabs used for something that they did. It's an archer's term. In classical Arabic, the khati'ah was to miss the mark. You know what sin means in Old English? It's an archer's term, to miss the mark. Yeah, I'm not making that what she says seriously. No, I'm making up. Google, you've got Google. Okay. Seriously. Yeah. She missed the mark. It's all right. What is the idea of missing the mark, if that's what a sin is? What's the idea behind that? This is a very interesting idea. If you miss the mark, and that's a sin, what's the idea behind that? You were trying to get the bullseye, but you missed it. So you were trying to do something good. And that's why human beings, even when they sin, they're actually trying to get a benefit for themselves. But they've misplaced the benefit. They see the vice as a virtue. But it's actually, they wouldn't do something if they didn't think there was something in it for them. Humans don't do that. So they're aiming for something that they think is good for them, but they've missed the mark. And that's what the prophets are about. They come with tasweeb. They're the ones that teach you how to aim properly. No, you're too short. You're too far. Extremism, right? You're either too liberal or you're too conservative. Muslims are independents. Yeah. I would never join a party. And like Mark said, I would never join a party that would have me as a member. I would never join a party, really. Any party except Hezbollah. And that's not the one in Lebanon. They shouldn't use these terms. You know, call yourself something else. You know, seriously, it's such arrogance to do that. I'm sorry, with all respect to whoever and whatever, it's arrogance to say that that's a da'wah. Allah knows who. And ala inna hizballahum al-ghalibun. So you haven't defeated Israel yet. You know, hum al-ghalibun. That's what Allah says. People that are his, He will give them victory always, in everything. And if you're not, you should worry about where you are. You know, but Muslims have to be very careful. All these claims, these claims. We make so many claims. Let me get into politics, and then people get mad. He's dissing Hezbollah. Allah. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. The qawl, حق القول, ثبت القول, it's been confirmed on the majority of them that they're not believers. They don't believe. And حق القول أملأن جهنم من الجنة والناس أجمعين. That Allah has أصحاب النار. There's people for the fire. That's what that means. إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا فِي أَعْنَاقِهِمْ أَغْلَالًا فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. We have placed in their necks aghlal, these collars. And they're big collars, so they can't bend their neck. فَهِيَ إِلَى الْأَذْقَانِ, they're up to the chin. فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. And some say the ghul is the hand, so they're actually tied like this. Right? That it's like that. So they have collars that have their hands tied up, because the ghul is a qaid for al-yad. So Allah, and this is what's called in balagha isti'ara tamthiliya. It's an example that it's using very expressive language, figures of speech, to create an understanding in the mind, like a metaphor that, when you say Zaydun Asadun, Zayd is a lion, you don't mean that Zayd is an animal that has a mane and teeth and growls or roars. You mean that he's courageous. So it's a way of driving that point home and creating a tamthil, an image in the mind of a person that enables them to really see the reality of these people's state. So that is the majority of scholars say this, because it's talking about these people specifically who were being called to Islam. And what's worse about them is that they weren't even interested in examining the proposition. And that's what acedia is. The word acedia is translated, it's a Latin term, but it's translated as sloth. But in Christian theology, acedia was not laziness, that people are lazy in their work. It was spiritual laziness, that people weren't interested in finding out the truth. That's what acedia is. And so this is really the warning about people that are suffering from spiritual acedia, that they're like people that have there's no humility. Because what do people do when they're humble? They lower their chins down to their breast. How did the Prophet come into Mecca? With his chin on his breast. That's how he came in, as a conqueror. If that was his state when he was a conqueror, then what was his state in normal circumstances? Because when you're conquering, that's the time to jump up and down, and that's what people do. Like these people, when they won the World Series, they didn't come out with their chins bowed down and humble and said, it's such an incredible honor to defeat a team like the Phillies, and we just were humbled by this victory. And, no, they were jumping up and down and gloating. Shamata, right? Really, that's what people do, right? It's very different. In the old days in sports, you actually went out and shook the hands of the people and said what a great game you played. Because sports was to teach people about humility and being gentlemen. Really, that's what sports was about. It wasn't about this. This is all new, modern spectacle. It's not sportsmanship. It's not how sports was. It's just modern man and woman, fallen. Yeah, that's all it is. See, and that's what this is talking about. It's arrogance. It's people with their heads high. And then Allah says, فَهُمْ مُقْمَحُونَ. Muqmahun is a term taken from camels, right? قَمَحَ الْجَمَلْ فَهُوَ قَامِحٌ. The camel, when they would take them to water, and it would raise its head up and refuse to go down and drink. That's what the camel, I lived with camels, so I know camels are very bright animals. Camels, first of all, the first time I rode a camel, it knew immediately that I'd never ridden a camel. And I grew up riding horses. Horses and camels are very different. But literally the first thing the camel did, it took me to a thorn bush and started rubbing me in the thorn bush. And all the Bedouin, they were just laughing their heads off. They just thought that was hilarious. Yeah. It wasn't. I had scratches all over and. But I learned after that to let them know right away that I knew exactly what the game was. Like I was being nice to the camel. No, you hit them right on that they have a little nodule right on the top of their head, and boom, you give them a good little whack, and suddenly they're nice and everything's wonderful. Yeah. But they're filled with pride, and And they look around and do this thing. That's the muqmah. Qamihun. They're arrogant. Qur'an? Why should I read that book? Well, because 1 out of every 4 people actually thinks it's from God. That seems like a pretty good reason just to be interested in it. Doesn't that seem logical? Just to read it and see maybe there's something in there? وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سُدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سُدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And we put before them a sud, which is like a barrier, or sad in Hafs. It's a barrier. سُدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سُدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُم. So there's a barrier in front of them, which is their understanding of akhirah. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where that they're going to be dead and raised up. And also, وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سُدًّا. And behind them, they don't even know where they've come from. So they're people trapped in temporality. They don't know past, because if they reflected on the past, they would know that the destiny of the people of the past is their destiny. They're trapped in temporality. And فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ. And over them is a ghishawa, right? There's a veil over their eyes. They can't see. فَهُمْ لَا يُبَصِرُونَ. They don't have penetrating sight, basira. وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنذَرْتُهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. It's the same, whether you warn them or you don't warn them, they don't believe. Now the problem, and this is important for Muslims, one of the problems with modern Muslims is they assume everybody's kafir if they're not Muslim. These verses aren't talking to everybody who's not a Muslim. They're talking about people who are arrogant, puffed up, filled with pride, and wouldn't give you the time of day. Read the descriptions of the kuffar in the Qur'an. They're jawwal, they're mutakabbir, yistakbirun, they're mukhtalun fakhur, they're zalimun. I mean, these are the attributes that Allah gives them. Most people are nas. A lot of them are just in ghafla. They're just nas. That's why Allah first calls people Ya ayyuhan nas before He calls them Ya ayyuhal kafirun or Ya ayyuhal ladina kafaru. He calls them Ya ayyuhan nas. Because initially He didn't call the Arabs Ya ayyuhal kafirun because they weren't kafirun. But after seeing miracles, after witnessing everything that they had witnessed, and treating the Prophet ﷺ the way they treated for doing nothing other than calling them to their own success, Allah said, حق القول. No, this is too much. You can't get away with this. So it's important, that people should not apply these things to people that they see out there walking around. The majority of these people, even though they have a legal status, which is outside of Islam, you don't assume about people that, I'll give you an example. And it's just an example from my own experience. I made a statement right after 9/11 where I said, if it was in an interview with a newspaper, that if there were any martyrs in that event, it would have been the firefighters. And somebody went to my teacher in Saudi Arabia, my teacher, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, and said that I said that the kuffar were shuhada. Now, it's very interesting. First of all, Sheikh Abdullah said, what word did he use? Did he say shaheed? He said, no, he said martyr. He said, well, look it up in the dictionary. And because he knows French, he said martyr. He said, it's true, they're martyrs. Because in French, a martyr is the one that gives his life for other people. That's called manduha, The thing about Muslims is they're supposed to actually look for excuses for people. So he was just being a good Muslim. But anyway, my point is that the assumption was they were kuffar. Did you check those firemen? Did you go and ask them what they believed and how? The basis is not kufr, it's iman. People are believers before they're disbelievers. The assumption about people is belief before it's disbelief. Because belief is a fitra state. Isn't our deen al-fitra? Don't we believe that people are actually by fitra inclined to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So their inherent state is belief. And disbelief is actually a state that comes later because of arrogance for whatever reasons. But these are too severe. You're making things too, it's just simple kuffar, Muslimun. Just makes everything easy. Just Red Sea, split it. We're on that side, they're on that side. Well, not me. I'm a convert. Okay, so I know what it's like on both sides. Because I've been on both sides. And by the way, kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, you were the best people, past tense. No, seriously. That's the tafsir. Read it for yourselves. Muslims talk about kuntum khayra, and they think like it's present tense. We're the best people. No, what are you doing for humanity right now? Where's your great medical discoveries? Where's your aid to starving countries? What are you doing for Darfur? What are you, I mean, seriously, what? Just tu'minuna billahi, right? And then what? Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhawna 'anil munkar. It's not just iman billah. You have to be actually out there doing things to get the khayriyah in this ummah. But that's a past tense. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. That group were all converts. For people that your daughter's too good to marry to the convert because you've got your tree that goes back 12 generations, and he doesn't even know who his great grandfather was. Just something to think about. إنما تنذر من اتبع ذكر وخشى الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. Surely you warn the one who will follow this reminder has khashya of the merciful when nobody else is looking. Because a munafiq will display outwardly, but when nobody's there, what's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's where it counts. فَبَشِّرْهُ. Give him bushra. So there's the indhar. You warn them about what happens if you don't follow this, but if they follow it, they have bushra. Give them bushra of forgiveness for any of their shortcomings, their sins, missing the mark, falling short, and a great and generous reward. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا آثَارُهُمْ وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. So, Allah, and this is at the essence of Yasin. We bring the dead to life. وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُمْ. And we write down everything that they are bringing forward to the Yawm al-Qiyamah, all of their actions, وَآثَارَهُمْ, and any traces they leave behind, what they bring forward and what they leave behind. That's all going to be أحصيناه, ضبطناه. We've given it specific accounting and reckoning. في إمام مبين. The imam here is the book, في كتاب مبين, because the book, it leads you, right? The book leads you. في إمام مبين, in a clear book. The نكتب, the malaika write everything down. Banu Salama were a tribe outside of Medina. And they were between the Quraysh, Mecca, and Medina itself. I mean, they're in just outside Medina, but if the Quraysh came, they would have come and met up with Bani Salama. And they were a very strong tribe. But they used to go every morning, and it would take them a long time to walk to the masjid. And so they told the Prophet ﷺ that they wanted to move into Medina so that they could pray with him Fajr and not have to walk so far. The Prophet ﷺ was troubled that it would leave an opening for the enemies in Medina so that they could get them at dawn or something or sneak up on them. But on the other hand, he was very compassionate and saw that they were trying to come to Fajr and that. So Allah, this verse was revealed to let them know that that walking you're doing every morning, it's all in your book. And alhamdulillah. So Asma's just got up and I'm done, and that's a good place to end. Inshallah, may Allah put this all in our book on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the good book, on the good side. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. Alhamdulillah. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam khairan ma jazayta nabiyyan an ummatihi. Ameen.